Hey, Stories of the Soul fam. We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what cities are Luna wiped the sweat from her forehead as she carefully dusted the ornate bookshelf in the grand library of the Blackwood mansion. The morning sun streamed through the massive windows, casting golden rays across the leather-bound volumes that lined the walls from floor to ceiling. She had been working as a housemaid for the wealthy Blackwood family for 6 months now, and still, the sheer opulence of the estate never failed to take her breath away. At 23, Luna carried herself with a quiet grace that seemed almost out of place in her simple uniform. Her dark hair was always neatly pulled back, and her green eyes held a mysterious depth that suggested there was more to her story than anyone knew. She worked diligently, sending most of her wages back to the orphanage where she had grown up, keeping only enough to survive. The master of the house, Adrien Blackwood, was a man who commanded attention wherever he went. At 32, he had built his business empire from the ground up, earning his first billion before he turned 30. His sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes made him devastatingly handsome, but his cold demeanor kept everyone at arm's length. The staff whispered that he had never been seen to smile, not once since taking over the family business after his father's death. As Luna reached to dust a particularly high shelf, her fingers brushed against something that shouldn't have been there. Hidden behind a row of ancient texts was a small velvet box. Curiosity getting the better of her, she carefully pulled it down and opened it. Inside lay the most beautiful pendant she had ever seen. The silver chain held an intricate cross adorned with tiny emeralds that seemed to glow in the sunlight. "What do you think you're doing?" Luna jumped at the sound of the deep, commanding voice behind her. She spun around to find Adrien Blackwood standing in the doorway, his expression thunderous. He was dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and tall frame. His presence filled the room with an intensity that made Luna's heart race. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood," Luna stammered, still clutching the pendant. "I was just cleaning and I found this. I didn't mean to pry." Adrien's eyes fixed on the pendant in her hands, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise? Recognition? Luna couldn't be sure. He strode across the room with purposeful steps, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. "Give it to me," he demanded, holding out his hand. Luna hesitated for just a moment before placing the pendant in his palm. As their fingers brushed, she felt a jolt of electricity run up her arm. Adrien seemed to feel it too, because he pulled his hand back quickly, studying her face with those penetrating blue eyes. "Where exactly did you find this?" he asked, his voice softer now but still commanding. "Behind those books, sir," Luna replied, pointing to the shelf. It was hidden in a small box. Adrien examined the pendant closely, turning it over in his hands. The emeralds caught the light beautifully, creating tiny rainbows on the library walls. He seemed lost in thought, as if the jewelry held some special significance that Luna couldn't understand. "This is very old," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Very valuable." "I should get back to my work," Luna said quietly, not wanting to intrude on what seemed like a private moment. "Wait." Adrien's voice stopped her as she turned to leave. She looked back at him, surprised by the gentler tone. "The clasp is broken. Here, let me fix it for you." "For me?" Luna's eyes widened in shock. "Oh no, sir, I couldn't possibly accept something so valuable." "It chose you," Adrien said simply, moving closer to her. "You found it when it had been lost for years. Perhaps it was meant for you to discover." Luna felt her breath catch as Adrien stepped behind her, gently lifting her hair to fasten the pendant around her neck. His fingers were warm against her skin, and she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine. The moment felt intimate, almost sacred, in the quiet library. "There," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "It suits you perfectly." Luna turned to face him, acutely aware of how close they were standing. She could see flecks of silver in his blue eyes, and for the first time since she had started working there, his expression wasn't cold or distant. There was something vulnerable in his gaze, something that made her heart flutter dangerously. "Thank you," she whispered, her fingers unconsciously touching the pendant at her throat. "My grandfather gave this to my grandmother on their wedding day," Adrien said unexpectedly. She wore it every day until she died. My mother hid it after the funeral, said it was too precious to risk losing. Then I definitely cannot keep it, Luna said, starting to reach for the clasp. It belongs to your family. Adrien's hand covered hers, stopping her movement. His touch sent another shock of awareness through her body. My grandmother always said it would find its way to the woman who was meant to wear it next, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Maybe she was right. The sound of sharp heels clicking on marble broke the spell between them. Adrien stepped back quickly, his expression returning to its usual cold mask, just as his fiancée, Cassandra Sterling, appeared in the doorway. She was a stunning blonde with the kind of polished beauty that graced magazine covers. Her designer dress probably cost more than Luna made in a year. "Adrien, darling," Cassandra purred, her calculating eyes taking in the scene before her. "I've been looking everywhere for you. What are you doing with the help?" "Luna found something that belonged to my grandmother," Adrien replied stiffly. "I was just examining it." Cassandra's gaze fixed on the pendant around Luna's neck, and her expression turned venomous. "That's a very expensive piece of jewelry for a maid to be wearing, don't you think?" "It's perfectly appropriate," Adrien said firmly, but Luna could see the tension in his jaw. "I see." Cassandra's smile was cold as ice. "Well, I'm sure our little housemaid has work to attend to, don't you, dear?" The dismissal was clear, but Luna caught Adrien's eye before she left. Something had changed between them in those few minutes. Something that went beyond the pendant now resting against her heart. As she hurried from the library, she could hear Cassandra's shrill voice beginning what sounded like an argument with Adrien. That evening, as Luna prepared for bed in her small room in the servants' quarters, she couldn't stop thinking about the afternoon's encounter. She touched the pendant gently, wondering about the woman who had worn it before her. What had Adrien's grandmother been like? Had she been as lucky in love as the pendant's beauty suggested? A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Thinking it might be Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, Luna opened it without checking. Instead, she found Adrien standing in the narrow hallway, looking somehow different in his casual clothes. "I wanted to make sure you were all right," he said quietly. "Cassandra can be difficult." "I'm fine, Mr. Blackwood," Luna replied, though her heart was racing at his unexpected presence. "Thank you for asking." "Adrien," he corrected. "When it's just us, call me Adrien." The intimacy of using his first name felt dangerous and thrilling at the same time. Luna nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. "The pendant looks perfect on you," Adrien said, his eyes dropping to where it rested against her collar. "My grandmother would have approved." Before Luna could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the doorway with her heart pounding and 1,000 questions racing through her mind. She touched the pendant again, wondering if it really had chosen her, and what that might mean for her future in the Blackwood mansion. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a love story that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself, and change both their lives forever. The next morning brought an unexpected invitation. Luna was polishing the silver in the dining room when Mrs. Henderson approached her with a puzzled expression on her weathered face. "Luna, dear," the head housekeeper said, adjusting her spectacles, "Mr. Blackwood has requested that you join him in the rose garden this afternoon. He said something about showing you the family history." Luna's hands trembled slightly as she set down the silver candlestick she had been cleaning. The pendant around her neck seemed to grow warm against her skin, as if responding to the mention of Adrien's name. "Are you sure he meant me?" Luna asked, hardly daring to believe it. Mrs. Henderson nodded, though her expression remained confused. "Quite sure, dear. He was very specific. Said to tell you to meet him by the fountain at 3 o'clock. The hours until 3 seemed to crawl by with agonizing slowness. Luna found herself checking her reflection in every polished surface she passed, smoothing her simple dress and touching the pendant that had somehow become so precious to her. She had never been to the rose garden before, as it was considered part of the family's private grounds. When the grandfather clock in the main hall chimed 3 times, Luna made her way through the mansion's winding corridors toward the garden entrance. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped into what could only be described as paradise. The rose garden was magnificent, with hundreds of blooms in every color imaginable, creating a tapestry of beauty and fragrance. Winding paths led between carefully manicured beds, and at the center stood an ornate fountain carved from white marble. Adrien was waiting there, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him, in dark jeans and a soft blue shirt that matched his eyes perfectly. "You came," he said, and Luna was surprised to hear relief in his voice, as if he had genuinely worried she might not show up. "You asked me to," Luna replied simply, walking closer to where he stood. "Though I'm not sure why." Adrien gestured for her to sit on the fountain's marble edge beside him. "I wanted to tell you more about the pendant you're wearing, about the woman who wore it before you." As Luna settled beside him, careful to maintain a proper distance, Adrien began to speak in a voice rich with memory and emotion. "My grandmother, Isabella Blackwood, was not born into wealth. She was a seamstress who worked in my grandfather's textile factory. When they fell in love, his family was scandalized. They said she was beneath him, that their love could never last." Luna listened intently, acutely aware of the parallels in their own situation. The pendant seemed to pulse gently against her throat, as if responding to the story of its previous owner. "My grandfather didn't care what anyone thought," Adrien continued, his eyes distant. "He loved her completely, and she loved him the same way. This pendant was his way of telling the world that she was his equal, his partner, his everything." "What happened to them?" Luna asked softly, already suspecting she knew the answer from the warmth in Adrien's voice. "They were married for 52 years, Adrien smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. "She died first, and my grandfather followed her within 6 months. He said he couldn't live in a world that didn't have her in it." Luna felt tears prick at her eyes. "That's beautiful. She always said the pendant would choose its next owner," Adrien said, turning to face her fully. "I never believed in such things until yesterday." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Luna could feel herself being drawn to him like a moth to flame, despite every rational thought telling her this was dangerous territory. "Mr. Blackwood," she began, but he held up a hand to stop her. "Adrien," he corrected gently, "and I know what you're going to say, that this is impossible, that we're from different worlds." "Aren't we?" Luna asked, though her voice lacked conviction. Adrien reached out and gently touched the pendant at her throat, his fingers grazing her skin and sending shivers down her spine. "Maybe, but maybe that doesn't matter as much as I thought it did." Before either of them could say more, the sound of sharp footsteps on gravel made them both turn. Cassandra Sterling was striding toward them, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. She was dressed impeccably as always, but there was something predatory in her movements that made Luna instinctively move closer to Adrien. "So this is where you've been hiding," Cassandra said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Having secret meetings with the help." "Cassandra," Adrien said, standing up with obvious reluctance. "I was just showing Luna the garden." "How thoughtful of you." Cassandra's smile was razor sharp. "Though I'm sure she's far too busy with her cleaning duties to appreciate such luxuries." Luna felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but before she could respond, Adrien stepped protectively in front of her. "That's enough," he said, his voice carrying a warning that made even Cassandra pause. "Luna is a guest in our home." "Our home?" Cassandra laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Darling, I think you're confused about the social order here. She's the help, not your equal." Luna couldn't take any more. She stood up, her dignity intact despite the circumstances. "I should go back to my duties," she said quietly, not looking at either of them. "Luna, wait!" Adrien called after her, but she was already hurrying toward the garden entrance. She didn't stop until she reached her small room, where she sank onto her narrow bed and finally allowed the tears to fall. The pendant felt heavy around her neck now, a beautiful reminder of how foolish she had been to believe that someone like Adrien could truly care for someone like her. That evening, as Luna was finishing her work in the kitchen, she was surprised to find Adrien waiting for her in the servants' hallway. His hair was disheveled, and there were lines of stress around his eyes that hadn't been there that afternoon. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "I think we said everything that needed saying earlier," Luna replied, not trusting herself to meet his eyes. "No, we didn't." Adrien stepped closer, his presence filling the narrow hallway. What Cassandra said today, it was wrong, cruel, but not untrue, Luna said sadly. I am just a housemaid, Adrien. You're engaged to someone from your own world. My engagement to Cassandra was arranged by our families for business purposes, Adrien said, his voice rough with emotion. I've never loved her. I'm not sure I'm even capable of loving anyone until... He trailed off, but Luna's heart completed the sentence for him. Until now. Until her. This is dangerous, Luna whispered, finally looking up at him. For both of us. I know, Adrien said, reaching out to cup her face gently in his hands. But I can't stop thinking about you. About the way you looked in the library yesterday. About how right the pendant looks on you. Luna closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite herself. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe my grandmother was right about more than just the pendant, Adrien murmured, his thumb tracing along her cheekbone. Maybe love really can conquer everything else. Before Luna could respond, Adrien leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and gentle at first, then deeper as Luna melted into his embrace. The pendant grew warm between them, as if blessing their connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Adrien rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. About the pendant, about your family. Luna's eyes flew open. My family? But I'm an orphan. I have no family. Adrien pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket, his expression serious. I had this pendant researched after you found it. Luna, this pendant doesn't just belong to royal families. It belongs to a specific royal family, the House of Ravencrest. Luna stared at him in confusion. I don't understand. Your real name isn't Luna Matthews, Adrien said gently. It's Luna Ravencrest. You're the lost princess of Valdoria, thought dead in a car accident 20 years ago. The world seemed to tilt around Luna as the truth hit her. The pendant, the strange sense of recognition she had felt, the way it had seemed to choose her, it all made sense now. That's impossible, she whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it was true. Deep down, some part of her had always known she was different, that her life at the orphanage had been a lie. The pendant responds to royal blood, Adrien explained, his hands steady on her shoulders as she swayed slightly. That's why it felt warm when you wore it, why it seemed to glow. It was recognizing its rightful owner. Tears streamed down Luna's face as 23 years of questions finally had answers. She wasn't alone in the world. She had a heritage, a legacy, a birthright. What does this mean? She asked, her voice barely audible. Adrien smiled, the expression soft and full of love. It means that Cassandra was wrong. You're not beneath me, Luna. If anything, your bloodline is far more noble than mine. But I'm still me, Luna said, touching the pendant reverently. I'm still the girl who grew up in an orphanage. Yes, Adrien agreed, pulling her close. And that's exactly who I fell in love with. As they stood together in the quiet hallway, Luna realized that finding the pendant had changed everything. Not just because of what it revealed about her past, but because it had brought her and Adrien together. Love had found a way, just as it had for his grandparents all those years ago. The pendant seemed to pulse gently against her heart, as if Isabella Blackwood herself was giving her blessing to this new love story. One that would prove that true love really could conquer all obstacles, even the barriers between a billionaire and a princess who had forgotten her crown.